Hello and welcome to the Grid Irn-Cru, an American football podcast made in Scotland by NFL lovers. This episode of the Grid Irn-Cru Special Cru is the first in a series of episodes in which myself and Gav will be covering the world of flag football. We have two very special guests joining us, fresh from the World Championships in Lahti, Finland, and shaping up for a possible head-to-head battle in Flag Finals Day this weekend. It's two of GB's finest players. First up, we have Manchester Crew's wide receiver and blitzer, Liam Harper. Welcome to the Grid Irn-Cru. Liam, how are you?
Very well, thank you. It's much appreciated you guys getting us on. So yeah, thanks. Looking forward to this.
Excellent. Next up, we have the man that represents the best flag team in Europe and the UK. Sorry, I should be biased just because it's mine and Gav's ex-team, but let's try and be objective. It's Glasgow Hornets DB, Ollie Dyer. Welcome, Ollie, and how are you?
I'm very well, thank you. Yeah, and again, thanks for having us. Yeah, looking forward to this.
And I think we should actually declare at this point that Liam does also have a bit of Hornets, not just his literal background at the moment for those that are actually watching the video feed with the gold, but you've also played, I think, a couple of tournaments with the Hornets. I'm told by the GB defensive coordinator Andy Gibson that your Hornets jersey is still waiting for you to return to.
Yeah, absolutely. Last year there's a tournament in Copenhagen every May. And I was asked to join in that, so we had a really fun time over there. We lost in the semi-finals, unfortunately, but yeah, that was a really good experience. So yeah, I do actually have I wore somebody else's jersey at that tournament, but since then they've had an actual Hornets jersey printed for me with my name and number on. So that is calling me for hopefully a future tournament. Yeah.
Excellent. Maybe after Ollie beats you at the weekend, you'll move teams. Guys, we're going to break you in very gently and let you talk about something we hope you're very comfortable talking about, and it's yourselves. Ollie, I'm going to start with yourself. What I know is how did you get into the sport? When did you start playing? And give us a little bit of your kind of career history.
Yeah, so I got into the sport quite late, really. I never really had. Well, I was always a big NFL fan, kind of growing up, but kind of at university and stuff. And when I was younger, I'd pretty much been playing rugby the whole time. But I had a flatmate at university who was kind of NFL mad, and he was at the time kind of quarterbacking the. So this is in Sheffield, so he was the Sheffield Sabres quarterback. And I think in his fourth year of uni, he did his ACL. And then we ended up living with each other after university, and because he'd kind of had a serious injury, he was kind of looking for like a football fix, but without kind of like the worry of getting injured. And kind of he discovered kind of the local team at the time, which was Sheffield Vipers, and he went down to a few sessions and was just like, "Oh, you're really into NFL. Like, you don't really want to play kitted. I think you should try this. You'll really like it." And then just went down to a training session, was hooked straight away, and kind of the rest is history, really. And then that was about 2019. I kind of dipped a toe in the water. And then I moved down south to London, and then COVID happened. So I didn't really, so I officially properly started playing flag in 2021. And that was with Sheffield Vipers as well. And then from there, just due to life, I've had to basically move. So I moved around a bit. So I ended up at Manchester Titans for a year. And despite living in Birmingham now, I've found myself at Glasgow Hornets.
So you're ultimately the flag football journeyman as a kid.
Yeah, it was kind of a weird one, really. I mean, basically the situation we had in Sheffield was, I think you guys will know from playing sport, like the thing that kind of drew me to sport was kind of the people playing it, and we had like a really close group of like people at Sheffield that I love playing with, and just the nature of it being an amateur sport, just literally over the course of one season, pretty much everyone moved away from the club, unfortunately. So a few of us kind of made a decision to go play with Manchester, because that's where like the quarterback James, who I'd lived with, had moved to, and made a decision to move there. And I'd moved to Birmingham, so I tried for a year to kind of play at Manchester and continue playing with them. And it was difficult because I basically wasn't training at all, was doing all the GB stuff. And then I kind of had to make a decision really moving forward, what was going to be the best thing for me, kind of to help me really progress career-wise, especially at GB. And there's no flag football teams in Birmingham, so I didn't really have that choice, unfortunately. But I'd played with Glasgow a bit at the Sport Monday tournament, which Liam had played at as well with them. I kind of knew a lot of the guys from GB, and playing on defence, a lot of the defence is made up of kind of Glasgow Hornets, and it's coached by Andrew Gibson, kind of the head coach at Glasgow. So I just made a decision really that would be the best thing for me to exercise although it's inconvenient.
I mean, when you think about it, Birmingham is such a big city to not have a team in it seems a bit crazy.
Yeah, it's crazy. And I think as well, I've been told this is before I was playing flag football. I think about 2016 as well. There was a team like Birmingham Lions, I think, who were national champions at the time as well. But I suppose that's just the issue of amateur sport, really, still, is that just teams can be quite volatile and can evaporate quite quickly, unfortunately.
Yeah, and I think one of the great things you kind of mentioned there, Ollie, is the fact that you have choice. So obviously you started off in Sheffield, moved to Manchester, and actually those are two cities where there's been a lot of options. So and certainly around the same time as the Vipers, they had the Gladiators, not the Gladiators, the Giants, I think was the name. I think that was a name change as well. In addition to the Vipers, obviously with Liam, you've got the Crows as well as the Titans in Manchester. So I think what's great is obviously Birmingham maybe being a little bit of an exception, but as time goes by, you're getting people moving around and they can find that actually they do have flag in their area, which is really good to see.
Yeah, definitely as well. And I think as well, you're seeing so many more like clubs now just popping up around in every single little pocket of the country as well. And just I think that's indicative of how much the sport's growing as well, which is great to see.
Yeah. All right, Liam, you've got the easy task now. You just tell Ollie having all the answers, so you can just follow on from him now. So it's the same sort of scenario. Obviously, kind of how did you get into the sport? How did you get playing? When did you get playing? And kind of what's your kind of career history?
Yeah, sure. So a bit like Ollie, I think we started at a very similar time, so the same year in 2019. Prior to that, I had no experience of playing any form of American football. Grew up playing football, soccer, and played basketball at university. So I graduated from my undergraduate degree in 2012, and then didn't really play any organized sport for a long time after that. And it got to sort of late 2018. I'd recently moved to Manchester. Well, I've been living in Manchester about a year and a half at that point, and I was really ready just to get back into some organized sport, mainly for the social side of things. You know, I missed playing with other people, and just kind of missed having that social aspect of playing a team sport. I've watched the NFL for a long time, probably since about 2007. So I'd always enjoyed the sport, and when I was at university in Edinburgh, we used to go to the meadows and throw a ball about now and again when the weather was nice, but nothing ever really organised. And I wish I knew flag football existed back then. And it wasn't until late 2018 I googled if there was a such thing as non-contact American football, because I didn't know flag football existed. And from that search, the Manchester Crows website came up, and so got in touch with Phil, who's the general manager. His email address was on there. I just said I was interested. This is like November time, and they were just wrapped up for the year in terms of training. So he invited me down for a session, started January 2019, went down, and I was kind of instantly hooked, to be honest. Just absolutely loved it. The guys were great. It was kind of more structured than I'd had just running around catching a ball, and just really got into the kind of tactical and analytical side of it, because whilst it's not quite at the same level as full 11v11 American football in that aspect, there's certainly a big sort of tactical and analytical element to it. So not only the physical side, but that side of things got me really interested in it, and just kind of took it from there, to be honest. And so it's been it'll be 6 years in January that I've been playing.
Yeah, that's excellent. I mean, me and Gav, like, we first played this sport many years ago, even before you guys even knew what American football was, to be fair. One of the first times that me and Gav met up, we actually played for a team called the Glasgow Sabres, who were formed as a result of a Scottish Claymores forum. So guys, just a group of guys kind of, like, what can we do? There was a flag football league already in position. The Grangebury Broncos, actually, they were still there playing at that time. And there was a team, the Kirkcaldy Bulls, who were basically like the all-stars of flag football at that time, like one of the team that can never be beaten. And we kind of just, a couple of guys went down the park and we basically formed a team. Aberdeen Oilcats came out of that as well. They were another team that kind of came out of Touchdown Claymores as well. So, Gav, the point I'm going to get to here is, like, we played this sport probably about 20 years ago. Since then, the sport has grown ridiculously fast. I mean, what's your thoughts on the growth of the game over the last, since we first played the game?
So I think, Dan, first thing I've got to say is I turn 40 next week, but I think by you talking about forums, you've actually aged me more than I'm worried about the number itself. So yeah, for all of the kind of the younger fans that are following us in social forums, there's basically a web page we go and type in posts and kind of reply to it in a big list format. But yeah, I think when we started off, there wasn't even a British league in 2003. There was a Scottish league. I think the first year we played, there was 6 teams officially in the league. There was only really ourselves and 2 others. You mentioned Grangemouth and Kirkcaldy that really finished their slate of games along with us that year. And I think even 2004, although we as a team grew, that the league was only 4 or 5. So we did kind of go through, I think, several years where it was kind of struggling to get structure. And I think really what's been amazing watching the World Championships recently, but even just thinking how the league's evolved over years, is how far it's come. Because I mean, I think, Dan, our first game was on an old ash blaze pitch. We're playing in public parks, we've played in hillsides, and things have evolved. I think by the time I was playing, sort of 2016, 2017, we were in like indoor astrodomes and things like that. So, and obviously now here we are, you guys at the World Championships, where it's live streams from Finland. We can follow every game, and we can get clips of and Titanic reels of best plays out, within like 30 minutes of the game finishing. So it's amazing to see how far this game's come. And I think what I think is great is that now, particularly, talking about how we start in forums, you do have social media. You can get out there and promote the game. I think the way we HNC it, guys, they were saying that they'd had up 500,000 views over the course of the tournament, which is phenomenal exposure for the sport in this country, and long may it continue.
Excellent. As Gav mentioned a couple of times, the guys, we're going to chat about the Worlds next. Obviously, you're not long back from your trip over to Scandinavia for that. First, what I ask you guys is, obviously, representing your country at any kind of level is a massive achievement. To go and play at a World Championships is probably the pinnacle that you can get at the moment. So, Liam, for yourself, how did it feel kind of getting picked for the squad?
Yeah, a lot of pride. Yeah, it's a real honour to represent the team, represent the country. I'll be honest, I never thought I'd ever play sport at this level. And even when I started playing flag football, I didn't realise there was such a thing as an international competitions or a national team. And it certainly wasn't the reason that I got into the sport, but it's definitely one of the reasons that's kept me going playing it, and really pushed me to sort of get better at the sport. So yeah, just a lot of excitement. It was kind of April time, I think, when we were told what the squad was. And I guess in some ways it's exciting, but also then you realize, a lot of hard work still needed to be done at that point to get ready for the tournament a few months later.
Yeah. And Ollie, how about yourself? We can have also a lot of pride getting selected to play for your country at a sport that you love.
Yeah, very similar to Liam. Like, obviously, like, really, like, great feeling. Like the phone call you have when, like, the head coach Alan Young calls you for the first time and tells you that going to a World Championship is pretty special. And yeah, but like Liam says, from there though, there's a lot of hard work that needs to be done to go into it. And I can remember when I got called up last year for the first time as well. It can be a little bit daunting as well, because you kind of realise how real it is. But yeah, it's a lot of pride. It's exciting, and like Liam says as well, like, it's a situation I never certainly thought I'd be in when I started playing the sport 5 years ago. So just got to make the most of it and cherish it, really.
Yeah. So you guys had just roughly about a 5-month lead in from when you get picked to the actual tournament started then. So from kind of getting selected then, Ollie, like until the kind of pre-camp, like, before you kind of met up to go to the tournament, kind of what sort of work were you guys having to put in? Obviously, you get your normal stuff that you do for your clubs in terms of what you say. There's a lot of hard work from getting selected till the actual tournament, sorts of things we talking about getting prepared for.
So yeah, you're on a schedule. You have about a camp every month, kind of leading up to Worlds as well. So you'll have a whole weekend kind of going at it with each other as well, and those can be pretty intense weekends. But other than that, it's just kind of make sure you're doing all the right things off the field as well. So making sure you're doing all your S&C stuff correctly. So a lot of gym work, keeping yourself in shape, making sure you're looking after your body best you can. Just make sure you're eating the right things. It's just, yeah, I suppose a lot of sacrifice as well kind of goes into it as well, with that kind of stuff as well. And I mean, I've had to miss like social events and stuff like that as well, unfortunately, but that's just part of it, really, because I think you've just got to be really fully committed to being like the best athlete and the best person you can be going into these tournaments and making sure you're getting that 1% like
Yeah.
gain you can at every opportunity.
Yeah. Gav, me and you would have never made it in this modern game. We we were amateurs at the time. Going to the gym and stuff like that to play flag football, we would have never made it.
It's changed days, absolutely.
Excellent. Obviously, you've got a lot of experience of working with Youngie and Andrew Gibson, but Liam, for yourself, what's it like working under those guys? Obviously, you don't get to see them on a regular basis like Ollie does, but what are the guys like as coaches?
They're brilliant. Yeah, I would, I describe Andrew as Andrew Gibson as one of the heartbeats of the team. I think he takes the sport extremely seriously, but doesn't take himself too seriously. So, the camps are very enjoyable because of that. Because we're there to compete and we're there to get better, but we're also there to have fun and enjoy it. And he's definitely a big part of that. And then Coach Young, kind of similar actually. He's not got quite the same acerbic sense of humor that Andrew has, but he understands that. We want it to be competitive. We want it to be very much treat it as much as we can like a high performance program, and that's what it should be. But at the same time, we are pretty much completely self-funded. We're paying to do this. It's a sport that we got into because we love it, and I think we don't want to lose that. And so it does foster that kind of environment where it's a combination of being joyful, but also hard work as well. And that comes from the top down, really.
And I think maybe Liam, if you'd obviously kind of mentioned about that, I guess that sense of team. So, I mean, for most of us, that whether me and Dan back in the day playing sport, or even for most people even playing the league now, usually you've got a couple of training sessions a week. You've got a league game day on the weekend, and that's it. But you've obviously mentioned that the camps, and actually, you guys, your time in Finland, you're away, I'm guessing, for about a week, having that time together and actually playing games day after day. So, I mean, what does it feel like being in that environment where you really are kind of living out of each other's pockets?
Yeah, I think what we've done this year, and it was similar last year, but I think particularly this year, we've really developed a very close bond as a team and as a group. So not just the players, but the coaches, the staff as well. And when you are doing these weekend camps together, we always try and go out for a meal on. So typically people arrive sort of Saturday late morning, and we have a sort of full afternoon of training, and then we always try and get together for dinner on the Saturday evening. And I think that kind of informal bonding, having food together has kind of really made a big difference. It can make a big difference to your just getting to know people a little bit better off the field. And we try to do a few activities together as well, just kind of social things while we're at these camps, because it can be a lot if you don't have a bit of time to actually just get away from the sport and do something not flag related. And that's definitely helped. So that when we do go to Finland, like you say, we were there from me and Ollie actually got there a little bit early. We got there the Saturday night, and one of our other teammates, Spencer, flew in on the Sunday. But most people actually arrived Monday, so we all met at the airport on the Monday. So we were together then from Monday to Saturday, and you're pretty much sharing rooms together. We're all staying in the same accommodation. We pretty much have a schedule where we're always doing things together. But I feel like because of the bond that we had and how together we were, it never felt like you couldn't have your own personal space, or it never felt too much to be around the guys. And actually, it's one of the things to treasure, I think, is the time you spend together, and the shared experience is definitely a big part of it.
Well, obviously, as Liam mentioned, he's all kind of got together as of the Monday. But what was the camp like once he's all arrived in Finland? Kind of obviously he's done your prep before you got there in terms of what he's wanted to do. But once he's got there, what was the kind of mood in the camp like? What were the kind of expectations and targets that he's had?
I think the mood overall was just excitement. I like Liam said, it's always a pleasure to kind of see all the guys in the team, because we just get on so well with each other as well, and it felt so natural. So there's a lot of excitement when we got there, and I think because like the tournament happens so late in the kind of season as a whole, like there's just a lot of it just so ready to just kind of get out there and kind of do what we've been working so hard for all seasons to do, really. In terms of expectations going into it, I mean, Liam probably be better explaining this, but we were kind of quite deliberate and kind of focusing more on kind of process goals for the tournament as opposed to outcome. So kind of just making sure that we're doing all the right things off the field, kind of giving 110% to whether it be our S&C, kind of training, just kind of how we conduct ourselves. And then as long as we get all that stuff kind of taken care of, like the results will kind of speak for themselves. And as long as we can kind of come out of games and say like we've put absolutely everything into this and done everything we should have done, then the outcome will be what it will be. Now, obviously, we still want to finish as high as possible, but I think the best way of looking at it is, although we finished in the top 10, you might look at a team like Denmark who finished in the top 8 and say, well, they had a better tournament, but they actually only won 2 games and lost 4 games the whole tournament, whereas we won 5 games and lost 2. So there's a lot of different ways of looking at it. I think obsessing over the outcome is not necessarily sometimes the healthiest thing to do, although obviously you do want to finish as high as you want to.
No, that's a great way to look at it. I mean, Liam, you can come in and what Ollie mentioned there in terms of the process goals, but obviously as one of the captains of the team as well, what was your role in that?
Yeah, I certainly wanted us, like Ollie said, to not fixate on a particular outcome. I feel like it can then take a bit of the joy out of it, and also how you define success changes. Because say we had set a goal for a top 8 finish, and obviously we finished 10th, but actually the manner of how we played in the tournament and approached the games and how we prepared for to go there and while we were there, I think it was a success. But if we'd kind of labelled ourselves as being hopefully a top 8 team and we didn't achieve it, then I think it would have perhaps taken away a little bit from actually what we were able to do while we were there. And as a captain, I try and lead by example, and on and off the field. And so I was very much on board with that kind of that process goal focus, and everyone bought into it, and I think they understood it.
I think maybe just on that, Liam, I think you're absolutely right, and not just focusing purely on the outcomes, because I think there's a couple of key moments in that tournament where that really stood out for me. Just in terms of the situations that the team were in and how they responded to that. I'm not going to go into the details yet, because I think Dan's going to lead us through a recap, but just good, I think good for our listeners to kind of get an idea of exactly how the tournament went for you guys.
Yeah, so guys, a really quick recap the tournament, guys, just give people a bit of context of how the team got on across the whole week. So in the group stages, you went 3-0, beating Germany, Sweden, and Georgia in the group. Obviously, that's a great start to the tournament. Ollie, so came out for the group stages, winning the group, winning all first 3 games. How was that kind of felt within the camp?
I think really good. Like the Germany game in particular, that's kind of a game we kind of marked not just a year ago preparing for Worlds, but probably 2 years ago when we were going into Euros as a team that we kind of, well, obviously they went on to win the Euros, but even going into the Euros, they expected to be one of the best teams in Europe. Going into Worlds, I think they probably very much went into it like 3rd ranked in the world and kind of favoured themselves to potentially go on and win the whole tournament. So that was a game where I think a lot of people had kind of discounted us from the outside, and we were kind of quite ready to kind of go in there and just kind of prove a point, really, that we were like a serious team that could go in there and play against anyone and compete against anyone. It was. I mean, I won't bang on about the tournament structure too much, but we also kind of thought as well, playing Germany, that we were likely to play them again, just the way the tournament structure was, which we'd been preparing for as well. But obviously, just due to kind of how other games went, that didn't end up happening in the end, which actually kind of made that victory against Germany even sweeter, to be honest, because that was probably the best experience I've ever had in the sport so far. Just in terms of the actual atmosphere at the actual game, and just kind of reflecting on actually what we achieved and winning that game quite comfortably, really, I felt in the end as well.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point to make, Ollie, because there's several really tight games that you guys had. I mean, certainly I was watching the stream from home all through the tournament, and don't get me wrong, it was a very competitive game, but in the end, it was 34-20. You guys could kneel out the clock compared to some of the games that followed. That was a real statement win against the top side.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think just even though we got stopped on like the first drive and we conceded on our first defensive drive as well, I think everyone felt comfortable and still believed that the plan we'd had put in place was going to work. And as long as we stuck at it and played it like we knew we were capable of, then the result could take care of itself. So yeah, that was a pretty special win.
Perfect. Something Liam had mentioned on the HNC podcast was also you're kind of mainly part of doing the scouting for the team as well. So something you mentioned there about planning for Germany 2 years in advance, obviously in the world of flag football, when there isn't really much kind of in terms of game tape to watch. What's the process behind preparing for a game, maybe even a year, maybe 2 years in advance of when it's going to actually happen?
Yeah, so although we don't, I know there's not a lot of international film out there, but I suppose a lot of these guys we play against a club level as well, and I think you can kind of put bits and pieces together from watching certain club teams and kind of have a rough idea what you think the scheme will be or what certain personnel will be like. I think Germany is one of those teams where there is quite a lot of exposure out there on them. So if you kind of are prepared to put in the hours and do a lot of digging around, you will potentially find some ideas of what they're going to be like. Um, Whereas with other teams, that is a lot more difficult. So, for example, like we played Japan in the tournament, and we didn't really have much on Japan at all, other than like playing one Japanese team at Big Bowl. But it's just a process really of kind of looking at, I suppose, the international tape you have available to you, potentially, the guys playing in there, and looking at their club teams, and then kind of just looking at their playbooks, their tendencies from there, really, and then just trying to make plans.
Yeah, and I think it's one of these things that can be quite risky as well. Because certainly one of the things I remember from my time at the Hornets is I think from about 2012 we actually started trying to film some of our games and putting highlights out on YouTube and things like that, which in some ways is great because you're promoting your club, you're promoting the sport, but actually, especially when you move first in that, you're actually kind of giving the other teams an edge and you that's maybe you're not getting back in the other way. So yeah, I guess that's maybe something to be wary of, but obviously with the with more and more of these tournaments now being streamed, I guess you are getting these opportunities now to get an inkling at least of what the other nations are about.
Yeah, I think it'll be interesting going to kind of the international tournaments next year as well, because the difference with Worlds this year was obviously every single game was streamed as well. So there's not really anywhere to hide now on tape, I don't think. So it'll be interesting to see how much potentially that influences teams' like plans going into tournaments and stuff in the future, because it's almost at the kind of leveled the playing field a little bit in that regard.
Yeah. So after the group stage, guys, you moved into the round of 16 where he's played France. Unfortunately, losing that game 37-36. I mean, as Gav mentioned, you had a few tight games across the tournament, but this is very, very tight. Obviously, Liam, that's a very high scoring game, and it was some performance for you guys. It was missed by a margin, but was there any point where that game you look back thinking where that game was won and lost?
Yeah, there certainly was some key moments in that game, and I'll always emphasize that we win and lose as a team.
Yeah.
And there's always going to be something that everybody on the team could have done a little bit better in that game. But there were some key interceptions on offense that gave France got a pick six, and then also gave them some good field position as well on another interception. So that makes it very difficult for the defense then when the team starts it just before the halfway line. It gives them quite a good position to then go on and score. So yeah, that sort of got our backs to the wall a little bit, and it was tough to come back from that, to be honest.
Yeah.
But there's always going to be other things that you can pinpoint as well on both sides of the ball. But yeah, it does come down sometimes in flag to one or two really key moments, because you only have a limited number of drives to score at that level. It's very difficult to get stops on defense when you're playing against some of the best offenses in the world. And so you have to be very safe with the ball. You have to really limit turnovers, because just one or two and it makes it very difficult to win the game.
Yeah, I think one of the things I really noticed watching the tournament, it's funny when you don't maybe think about it so much when you're a player, but actually when you're watching it as a spectator, and particularly when it's almost in that broadcast format, it really ticks along. The running clock up to the 2-minute warning. There's no TV timeouts or anything like that. It really does run by. So I mean, it's quick. And one of my, I don't know if it's a gripe, but one of my kind of observations that maybe flag could really do with an onside kick equivalent to try and make these comebacks a bit easier. I'm not quite sure how you do that, but you're right. I think obviously momentum can be so important. If one team does kind of build up ahead of steam, how you come back can be tricky. But the big takeaway that I took from that game, I remember watching the France game, and I think they did. They got a crucial conversion, put them, I think, 9 points up. But you guys, you kept going to the end. You got that touchdown. Really, time expired, and I think added on the 2-point conversion to take it to a 1-point game. And what I noticed with that as well is that actually all throughout that, every member of the team that's not on the field is linked arms on the sidelines. The coaches are there with you. You can really tell how much it means to everyone being there in that moment, whether it's winning, but also in defeat.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's easy to stay together when you're winning and everyone's in a good mood. But losing is when I think you really see what a team is like and what the players within that team are like. And that's when you find out a lot about your teammates. And, this is the first time this configuration of the squad had played together. The core of the team had played together at the European Championships last year, and we'd lost games together there. And it was actually really good this year to work together as a team with a sports psychologist to kind of look back at some of those moments from last year, some of the reflections on that, and actually be able to talk about it in a kind of safe environment together as a team and hear everybody's points of view, because it helps you understand where people's mindsets are after a loss. And I think that actually helped us then going into this tournament, knowing, okay, how do certain people respond to losing games, but what can we do as a team to kind of mitigate that a little bit or support each other. And so I feel like, yeah, having that togetherness, getting behind each other, not pointing fingers, not blaming anyone, because ultimately, although we lost, we still have to go and play 3 more games in the tournament, and we want to. Although we're not going to finish in the top 8, we want to try and again finish as high as we can at that point, and becomes a pride thing. We've put all that work in to be there, and we had a lot more left to give as well. So I was really very proud of the team in that moment, that we did stay together and we didn't just roll over and take the 9-point loss, that we did actually try and go back out on the field. We got a stop on defense to get us the ball back, like you say, with about a minute or so to go, and then to score the touchdown and get the 2-point conversion with a few seconds left. I think it shows actually how far we've come as a team from last year, and kind of how together we are and how resilient we are.
As you mentioned earlier, even though he's lost to France, that wasn't the end of the tournament for you. Obviously, they've got the way the structure set up to play the different brackets, so he's kind of moved into the 9th to 16th place bracket, and it was a game against Spain next, with 34-28 win. And at the moment that Gav created your Titanic moment in this game, so obviously winning a game is obviously always great, no matter how you win a game. But to get that, for people that haven't seen it yet, Spain were trying to tie up the game, and Liam sacked the quarterback in the final play of the game to seal the win for GB. I've seen the video, the elation across the whole team is crazy, but how did it feel for both of you being in that moment when that actually happened? Because that's a very rare occasion for something like that to happen.
Yeah, as a blitzer, so the person who rushes the quarterback, tries to block their pass or pull their flag to sack them. For those who haven't really watched it, it's kind of the perfect ending to a game. It's kind of a dream ending. I think every blitzer would love to have that kind of finish to a game where it's their sack that then that ends it. So I got that moment, and got to wheel down the sideline and jump about a little bit, and that was a lot of fun. And it's just the build up to that moment as well. We'd kind of held them for a long time, stopping them scoring. And there was a few referee decisions that were questionable, and there was a bit of aggro, and it went on for quite a while. So just to end the game in that way was pretty fun.
And I think we've just been talking a wee bit about how you respond to things, because I think, Liam, I heard there's a bit of a story in terms of what happened after the game later on with the referees kind of caught up with you.
So typically there's like a 4 or 5 person ref crew. And it seemed like that ref crew didn't have a great team chemistry, as it were, and they were struggling to communicate with each other and figure out what was going on. Towards the end of the game, there was a few flags, a few penalties, and with a few seconds to go, Spain ran a play on offense, and as the clock expired during that play, and they committed an offensive penalty. So I think it was OPI that they committed. So by the rule book, that should be the end of the game, because Only a defensive penalty with clock expired would mean that another play can be run. But for some reason, not sure why, the referees decided to give Spain another shot at it with zeros on the clock. And obviously I had that moment where I got to sack the quarterback and end the game. But yeah, the head referee came up to me at lunch after the game and sort of came up to quite sheepish and said, we owe each other a beer. And I wasn't sure what he meant. I was a little bit drained at that time. And he kind of explained that, well, he owed me a beer because they messed up and there never should have been that final play from Spain. The game should have just ended there. But then I owe him a beer because it obviously gave me that moment, that Titanic moment to always cherish and have. And thank you guys for quickly putting that reel together and sharing it on Instagram. And it's something that I've kind of downloaded and I'll have that forever now, which is lovely. Thank you.
And I think it's obviously it's a great moment. It's great to see actually the refs can go out and have that conversation with the players. But I think maybe the other takeaway that I have from this, it's a good time to call it out, is we can't even cut these clips without the fact that the presentation for this tournament was superb. It's not just someone standing with an iPhone, doing a live stream from the sidelines or even like a static camera. Like we kind of saw it the under 15s at the weekend, but there was multiple angles. There was slow motion replays, which just goes perfectly with Celine's pipes. Those clips. So yeah, and I think there's end of game highlights, up there within seconds. So I guess it really shows that it's come a long way from not far from sort of jumpers for pylons, if you want to call it that, in the park. Actually, when you get the live scoreboard and the clock up and you've got the cameras, actually, I think maybe we're a bit unkind to ourselves. This is a world-class sport and it's genuinely exciting and entertaining to watch. And there are these big emotional moments, absolutely for GB, but for the other teams through the tournament as well. It's just been fantastic to see.
Excellent. So after the Spain game, guys, you went on to play Japan, which again was another very tight game, 36-34 win. But the story of it isn't really the final score. It's you were down getting into the last end of that game and made a massive interception from Maka. Basically, he was on the goal line, basically 1 yard inside your own end zone. And it was very smart play. And you watch it back and you think that was very clever, where he just downed the ball at the Japan one to kind of give his a bit of chance without the clock, kind of leaving too much time on the clock for these. Then got the score to go into the lead. I think it was about 8 seconds left on the clock when you took the lead in that game. So another massive play by the defence Ollie on that game. But again, similar to Liam's moment in the Spain game, is that another huge moment where you think this is an unbelievable moment for us again in this tournament?
Yeah, I think it was a theme throughout the tournament, really, kind of just the resilience we had as a team and kind of those critical moments, really. I think the best thing about that was obviously Maka quite easily could have just had his moment there, had a chance to kind of score a pick six in a big moment and kind of put the team first, really, which kind of embodies like the approach really which we had as a team as a whole. I think a lot of credit goes as well to kind of what we'd done in camps leading up to the tournaments as well. We'd practiced a lot of those kind of situations where it was like one score game, defense get a pick, or this is happening, and not just kind of trying to get the score to win, but also to try and leave as little time on the clock as possible. So I think that definitely helped in the lead up to the tournament as well. We kind of repped loads of situations like that as well, and thankfully it kind of came off really. But yeah, just full credit to Maka. I think that's probably one of the best. Well, it probably is the best defensive player I've ever seen in flag, to be honest. And just the selfless attitude to then just kind of put the ball down and be aware of the situation, and kind of take into glory for himself is just incredible, really.
And I think that's a really important point you make, Ollie, just in terms of being ready for these situations, because again, for people that may be picking up in flag for the first time, it is a shorter field. Goal line to goal line, it's 50 yards. Actually, you're driving for 45 because you start from the 5 yard line. But there are guys out there that can throw bombs just like the pros, and they've got the receiving talent to go and haul it in. So managing the clock, even when it is a 5-6 point game, it's not like even though you're protecting the end zone, you're not worrying about the field goal. That there are teams that can go out there and score. I guess it was high IQ from Maka to go and actually down the ball right at the one. But not only that, the next 2 plays, I think you actually nailed the ball down as well. So I guess that really speaks to the confidence of both the defense in the offense and the offense in themselves to know that they don't need 4 plays to score. I mean, is it just like that? You know that you can go and you only need 1 play to make it happen.
Yeah, I think there obviously is a lot of game theory that goes into it. I think we're really fortunate that we have Charlie, and I think this is one of the things Charlie doesn't probably get enough credit for. It's just how good he is at managing the clock and understanding these situations. And like for example, in that situation, I think I think there was about 26 seconds or so when we took the knee. And the kind of the situations you're kind of he's certainly going through in his head are if we score, if we just score there 26 times with 2 timeouts, knowing you can stop the clock by going out of bounds or get the clock stopping by going over halfway. That's plenty of time for any offense at that level to go and score. So you're almost leaving. So you are purposely trying to leave as little time as possible. And if you can burn those times out, then perfect. I think Charlie will certainly. I think in those situations, if you've got like 1 play from the 1 yard line, you're probably confident 90% of the time that the offense is going to make a play. So by knowing you can kind of kneel it twice, burn a little bit of clock, burn the 2 timeouts off of Japan, and then know you've then got 2 attempts really to score a play, which you should score 90% of the time. You're then leaving yourself a situation where the defense has got to do a lot wrong, or the opposing offense has got to do a hell of a lot right, really, to kind of win the game. And that's something like the coach is always conscious of, and especially Charlie always knows the kind of scenarios he wants to leave for himself to just give ourselves the highest percentage of winning, really.
Yeah, I mean, it's tremendous. As a tremendous football IQ. I mean, I'm a Giants fan, and I'd still have I guess, the surreal memory of Ahmed Bradshaw going in for a walk-in touchdown with a minute to go against the Patriots, and there'd been a funeral-like atmosphere as he does it, because it's like, no, you can see him trying to kneel as he gets to the 1 yard line. It doesn't quite happen, and Tom Brady very nearly pulled it off, and he had to go. I think 80 yards, flag it's 45. So yeah, I think it really speaks, when this is not a professional setup, to the fact that you guys put in the preparation, you consider these situations, and you have the confidence to follow through. I think it's really impressive.
Yeah, and I think again, I won't call out other countries for it, but there's certainly a lot of games you watch around the tournament where I think teams lost games because they weren't managing the clock correctly. But like I said before, that's something we practice a lot in camps, and we've repped those scenarios over and over again. So when it does come up in a big game, when it matters, we just feel confident that it's just something we've done before and that we know we can execute, really.
Excellent. After the Spain games, Japan game, guys, you then went into Israel for the 9/10 playoff game. Playoff game, which Israel ran out 36-26. Winners, obviously, that tended to mean you guys are probably a lot of games played and stuff like that as well against the team. So, to finish the tournament, basically being 10th in the world is some achievement. Before I get to kind of your thoughts on the tournament overall in general, we kind of question I wanted to ask you guys is, we covered the under-20s kitted World Championships a few weeks back, and I was surprised by some of the teams that I've seen in terms of the development of this sport across the world. So obviously we spoke about it in the UK, but across the world, this sport is American football in general, but flag. And one of the teams that impressed me at the Worlds in kitted was Japan, and they seem to have turned up flag as well. I mean, hopefully I haven't stolen your answers here by saying Japan as an example, but was there any teams when you went to that tournament maybe took you a bit by surprise, or about you're impressed, you weren't expecting much from them in terms of the development? Ollie, I'll come to you first.
I think the big surprise at the tournament was Switzerland finishing this is the men's, Switzerland getting the bronze medal. We know Switzerland a little bit. We played them last year at the European Championships. Our development team played them in a tournament in the summer called Big Bowl over in Germany, which is a slightly different format. It's 12-minute halves, rolling clock, and some countries use those type of tournaments to sort of take a bigger squad and use it as part of their trial process, essentially, and a kind of selection process, a bit of competitive football. And so we know them a little bit, and I think they definitely overachieved, and they would admit that themselves. I think top 10 would have been their goal, having spoken to them. But fantastic, and I think it's credit to their coaches and their players for the way they approach games. It sounds like they're very focused on scouting opponents, preparing game plans specifically for the team that they're playing, not being too rigid in terms of the scheme, and so I think that paid off quite a bit, because they were playing they played against 3 teams from sort of North Central America in a row. So they played Panama, Canada, Mexico, and beat all 3. All three of those teams are higher ranked than Switzerland and higher ranked than us as well. And I think they probably were underestimated by all 3 of those teams.
Yeah.
And that's probably 3 teams who don't do the work that Switzerland do in terms of preparation for opponents, and just kind of maybe rely a bit too much on athleticism and what they already do. So, I mean, I would imagine they'll probably learn from that and maybe take some of the lessons learned from actually losing to Switzerland into future tournaments. So, yeah, I think Switzerland would be my answer. And then potentially Serbia as well, who went into the tournament as an unranked team. We didn't know anything about them. I hadn't seen them at a tournament before, and they finished 17th. So kind of top of the bottom bracket, as it were.
Yeah.
So I need to watch some of their games to kind of see what they're like, because I didn't really get to see them while I was there. But that was a surprise and an impressive outcome, I think, for them.
Ollie, what about yourselves, apart from ones Liam said, any other teams that kind of jumped out to you as a surprise, or you're pleasantly kind of shocked by them?
Yeah, I think Czechia, Czech Republic, were probably like a team as well that have kind of really surprised me. I mean, they had a top 16 finish and just looked like a really athletic, competitive team, and they were going blow for blow with Germany in one of their placement games at one point. And I think along with like Serbia, like Liam's mentioned, you've got other teams like Sweden who weren't in the top bracket, but are also really good teams as well. I think it's going to be really interesting in the Euros next year, because I think all the teams, pretty much all the European teams, especially that are at the World Championships a year, looked a lot better than they were last year. I think you're probably going to see the same jump again,
Yeah.
and there's going to be a lot of other kind of nations that are going to make big leaps as well. I think that's what's quite exciting, really, with flag football. Really, outside of kind of the US, who are kind of by far the best team in the world right now, that from 2 all the way down to potentially 16 or even further, it's really competitive. And I think the order, if you were to replay the World Championships tomorrow, could be jumbled about massively. And I think that's just really exciting for the sport, because I think the more competitive teams there are, just the more exciting it is as a spectacle, and just the bigger the game will grow. Although it does make me a little bit nervous about kind of Olympic qualification stuff as well, because that's going to be very, very tough. It's just great to see. And I think the quality of the tournament as well, just as a whole, was just unbelievable. I think that was probably the biggest shock, really, was just seeing in the men's game and the women's game how far the sport's gone in even the 2 years that I've been around that level, to be honest.
So can I maybe just, I guess, follow up on that? Because I don't think we've broached that subject yet. Obviously, you mentioned the Olympics. Do you think that is factoring into the team's considerations already in terms of the preparation, or do you think it's just very much sort of business as usual? We're here for the Worlds, the Euros, and you just want to do well there?
Yeah, I think for some nations especially, that probably would have been on their radar for a while. I know probably countries like Germany, France have probably been thinking about this, similar to us, probably before the announcement was made, and kind of anticipating that. But I suppose with kind of the Olympic announcement and it being an Olympic sport, I don't know how the structure is in other countries, but I assume there's going to be injections of cash going in, and just a lot more interest from people into going into a sport which is probably is a minor sport in their country, and they probably see that as an opportunity to maybe play like at the highest level, really, at an Olympics. So yeah, I think it's definitely something that's factored in. It's certainly, I can already feel it, I think, in GB as well. Like there's just a lot of buzz around it, and I think that's factoring into a lot of decisions as well now.
Right, cool. We'll come back to the Olympics. I mean, Gav, don't go too soon with the Olympic stuff. We've got loads of that to chat. Guys, what a point is we've read over the last couple of days is Cammy, Wilson, and Emma, as indeed have basically mentioned stuff about mental health around the tournaments and stuff like that. I think Emma was talking about lack of sleep and about anxiousness and stuff about the tournament. Obviously, Liam, you mentioned that the team are very close together, but is that something like going from a sport that's not really in the spotlight to suddenly being in the spotlight? Do you think that's something that we need to be mindful of going forward for players that maybe are used to basically playing this as a hobby to an extent, to going into the spotlight very quickly?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I feel like it's something that probably needs to come in a little bit more. And well, I know it doesn't feel like within the men's squad that was much of an issue. But that's not to say that it isn't. And I feel like maybe as a group, men are a little bit less forthcoming around those sort of issues. And I really applaud Cammy for the post he put out yesterday around that. I think that's very brave of him to kind of bring that up, and I'm sure there's a lot of people that would have resonated with. But yeah, I would imagine that the bigger the sport gets, and the bigger the platforms, and the more exposure, the more pressure people will feel, well, when they're playing or when they're preparing for these tournaments. So generally, I think the sports science support and sports psychology comes under that umbrella. Certainly needs to improve within the sport. We have had some really good sports psychology stuff this year, but the focus of that was around building team chemistry, performing under pressure, and kind of performing in these clutch sort of moments. And I feel like the work that we did actually came through with some of the performances and some of the moments at the tournament. But yeah, I feel like every athlete in any sport might need some of that mental health kind of support at any time. If somebody's injured, I think that's a big one. If you're not able to actually train or compete, that is certainly something that can be very difficult. So yeah, it's a great question, and I hope that it's something that that develops a bit more within the sport.
Excellent. All right, Ollie, so think about it. Also spoke about the whole tournament and whole there. So if you as an individual person, how would you summarize the tournament for you, and kind of what are you taking away from it as an individual and as a player?
Yeah, it's like mixed emotions really. It kind of links back to what we were just saying, because I broke a finger on the first day of the tournament, so I actually missed like the whole of day 2 and day 3, and then I was quite fortunate to kind of strap up and play against Israel. So yeah, that was. So it's kind of, I was probably at the lowest point I've probably been really in sport. At the morning, kind of waking up at the morning of the Germany game, really, I was realizing I wasn't going to play. But you kind of just have to pick yourself up really, and just try and do everything you can despite not playing, to kind of do what you can to support your teammates. Whether it just be on the sideline encouraging people. Because I wasn't playing, I then had the luxury that I could kind of sacrifice a bit more sleep and kind of just do more film study and trying to help out in that way really. So I suppose that personally for me, that part of the tournament wasn't great. But I think now I've kind of got back and the kind of the blues are gone, and just I can sit back and kind of appreciate the actual tournament as a whole. Like, it was just an unbelievable experience, just the professionalism of it whilst we were there, just kind of pride and privilege really to be in that position, and just be able to say I've represented my country on that stage. Was just amazing, and I wouldn't change the whole experience just despite being injured at all really, because just some of the moments we had as a team were just unbelievable. So yeah, as a whole, yeah, very positive experience.
Excellent. And Liam, what about yourself? What are you taking away from the tournament as a captain of the team, and you as an individual?
Yeah, it was certainly one of the best experiences of my life, on and off the field. Just I always made sure to kind of try and enjoy every moment, take time to actually be very present and just think about how far I've come as a player and as a person, to be in that position to, yeah, like you say, captain the team, be able to compete at this sport at this level. I certainly don't take it for granted, and I always think about, I'm 34 years old. There's going to be a time when I'm going to have to hang up the boots. Hopefully not too soon, but I'll always have that to sort of look back and cherish. So while I'm in that moment, I want to make sure I do. So yeah, just a fabulous experience, and tournament organizers, IFAF, I think did it justice, in terms of the venue, the location, one of the most beautiful places I've ever been, and it was a place to go and play sport even better. And yeah, just we talked about the streams and just the way that they'd set up the fields, everything. Just had you felt like an elite athlete, and I think I still struggle to realize that maybe that's what I am, but it just feel like I was in that for that whole week, and I'm hoping be able to do it again in the future. But like I say, if that was my last tournament, then I made sure to really enjoy it.
Excellent. Yeah, guys, it's been great following both teams, the men's and the women's team, from here in the tournament. And as I said, we're hopefully going to get a couple of the women to tell us their experiences. But for us, it's been great to watch you guys. Performances you put out, the tenacity and the resilience that you guys showed across the whole tournament was unbelievable, and it was great for us to watch it. So thanks for sharing the experiences of the tournament with us. So guys, we've mentioned at the start, we've got a flag football finals weekend this weekend coming up. So you guys are obviously both involved for your respective teams. Finals weekend, the 14th and 15th September, taking part at Platt Lane in Manchester. 12 of the best teams in the country are making up the men's bracket of the playoffs. All your Hornets, you finished 15-0-1 for the season, with a wee tie in there, undefeated season. And Liam, your Crows finished 14-2 for the season. So, Ollie, for the Hornets, can I give us a quick summary of how your regular season kind of went down?
Yeah, it was a strange start to the season. Drawing a game is not a very common occurrence, and it was very frustrating. I think that's probably one of the worst games individually. I think everyone admits that they've ever played, and it was a bit nervy going into that game as well, because kind of Nicky Farrar, our quarterback, was coming off a broken hand going into that as well. So, and that was the first time he'd thrown a ball in a few months. So there was a lot of nerves going into it, and we've certainly played nervous, but just a game really we deserved to lose, to be honest. But we just found a way to kind of get a draw, and then from there, really, it just a lot of competitive games. It was my first experience, it was my first season with Hornets, so playing in like the Highlands division, if you like, for the first time, and realizing actually how competitive a division is. Like there's no like game days off really. Like you're playing Aberdeen, you're playing Grangemouth, Edinburgh, a really good team as well. Like Renfrewshire when they're at full strength as well, really good. So it's a very competitive division to play in. But we were kind of just clinical really throughout the season and got the job done really. And I suppose we were quite fortunate because as soon as we'd drawn a game, we kind of believed that the one seed was out of the picture. But obviously, kind of down south, there was a few results that kind of like shook things up a little bit, and fortunately, we kind of ended up stumbling into the one seed.
Yeah, as you said, they just finished as number 1 seed across the country. Liam, your Crows just finished as number 4 seed in winning the Premiership North. We are 14-2 record. How would you sum up your guys' regular season?
Yeah, a really successful year. We've never won the division. We've always come second to the Manchester Titans. So it was nice to finally get one over them. I'd never beaten them in, I think, 8 attempts. So to finally beat them in a 6-0 thriller this season, definitely a one for the purists. To get a shutout was pretty special, but then to only score 6 points means that it was a bit of a stressful experience. Gav, I can see your incredulous face there.
Yeah, we're going to have to circle back on that. So 6-0, was it like a thunderstorm that day, or tell us a little
dry,
bit about that?
dry, no rain, no wind, just a defensive masterclass on both sides of the ball, to be honest. And we just somehow managed to scrape a score. I think it was the 74th play of the game.
Wow.
That someone finally scored, and yeah, we managed to see it out at the end by a bit of clock management, as we talked about, to kind of see it out. So yeah. And then so we play them twice because they're in our division. And the second game we lost 42-40, so you couldn't really got a different game. Yeah, we are very, very pleased as a team to win the division, and to get the 4th seed is excellent, because it gives us a bye into the quarterfinals, which we've never had before.
Yeah, looking at how you mentioned there, you guys, your two teams, the Cardiff Hurricanes and the London Smoke, are the top 4 seeds, so you all get a bye into the next round. And the way the rankings work, Manchester will play the highest seed that comes out of the wild card round. The Hornets will play the lowest seed. But if all 4 top ranked teams win their games, you guys will play each other in the semi-finals. How do you kind of feel about that?
Well, I have played the Hornets a few times. We just play each other once a season. And my first year in 2019, it was my 3rd ever game of flag. Still didn't really know what I was doing, just running quickly in a straight line and catching the ball. And we went up to Glasgow and we beat them. And I think at that point they'd lost the game day before against Grangemouth, which was the first time they'd lost in ages. And so we managed to get a win there. And I don't think they've ever lost a regular season game since then. But yeah, since then we've not had a good record against the Hornets. But it'd be an incredible experience. I love playing against Ollie. I love playing against the guys, because a lot of them are in the GB setup. Whether we can make it competitive or not is another question, and obviously we need to win our quarterfinal first. So I think I'll just worry about that and then take it as it comes.
Yeah. I mean, Ollie, for you guys as a number 1 seed, obviously you won't feel taking on anybody across the whole country, but there's some really strong teams in these playoffs, isn't there?
Yeah, I think naturally you just got to be prepared to play all the best teams there. If you want to win the whole thing, you're going to have to play the best teams there. If we play Manchester, it's going to be a really tough game. It was not an easy game in the regular season. Fortunately, we were able to win it, but it was a high-scoring game. It's tough to get stops against them. They're just a really good team. But yeah, I'm quite excited in general for kind of the playoffs this year, because I think the 12 teams that are in it is probably the strongest 12 teams in the playoffs since I've kind of been around the sport. And I think even like the 12 seed, like Neptune's like going into it, they're like a really good team. They've got a lot of like good talent as well that can potentially cause some upsets, like all the way up to the 1 seed. So there's not going to be an easy game all weekend. It's going to be tough, but that's the way we like it.
I think maybe a question for me, just kind of tying it all together, is we've talked quite a bit about your time with the GB camps and the setup, and obviously the fact that we're just over a week removed from the World Championships. What do you think it's like for you guys? Obviously, having been part of that setup for a little while now, what do you think it'd be like bringing that experience back from such a big tournament into the pinnacle of UK flag this weekend?
Yeah, I think it's very different, but we love playing for our clubs, and the standard of flag in the UK is very, very high. And so the games will be really competitive. And because we've got a lot of that experience, we can bring that back to our clubs as well. So for me, I feel like I've been able to take a lot of lessons that I've learned from GB to the Manchester Crows, and that's helped us to grow as a team and get better as a team. To see that is quite heartwarming, really. I think that's a big part of the national program, the success of the national program, as it's filtered down into the domestic game, and that comes from the coaches and then from the players taking it as well.
Yeah, I think one of my reflections, not just even watching the flag game, but even the professional game, is sometimes it can be really difficult to learn how to win. I remember certainly from my time at the Hornets, there was probably a point where, we made it to our first UK finals. I think back then it was like the top 8 went to finals day, and that was a fantastic achievement. But all of a sudden, you come back the next season, and you have to deal with almost the kind of the expectation it should be winning, and what happens when things don't go the way you are. And I think we've seen it even in the pro game. Like, I think the Seahawks a decade ago, it took them a couple of years to go from sort of making a stir in the playoffs to winning. I think we're possibly seeing the same thing with the Lions now. So I guess for you, Ollie, the Hornets have obviously been to multiple finals, but for you, your first year as a Hornet, being part of those moments, against Spain and against France that didn't go your way, do you think those are the kind of the key moments that kind of prepare you to perhaps see out some of these big playoff ties?
Yeah, I certainly think it helps as well. And although being on the Hornets as well, I'm still probably one of the more inexperienced players on the team. Like, the offense obviously led by Nicky Farrer, who's been around the sport for ages as well. And like, I think like Liam said, they've not lost a regular season game in years. So they just have a habit of knowing how to kind of just win games, really. And I think that gives you a lot of confidence playing on defense, knowing you've got an offense that will just find a way to get it done sometimes. And the defense will have their backs and they'll have our backs in situations as well. So yeah, and I think it also helps as well, because a lot of the Hornets defense is made up by kind of GB players as well, that there's just a lot of familiarity when playing on that defense. But I don't feel like there is much expectation going into playoffs, because ultimately London Smoke have been the national champions for 2 years in a row now, and it feels like they're still the team to beat, even though they did lose a regular season game. It feels like it's still theirs to lose, really, this year. So I don't think there's too much pressure going into it, really, or expectation.
Well, good luck to both your teams this weekend, guys. Obviously, only one team can win, and we will stay objective and not be biased in our points of view. But good luck to you guys, and obviously good luck to the other 10 teams taking part. We will keep an eye on things over the weekend and kind of keep people updated on what's happening. So, something we mentioned earlier on, guys, is kind of came through our conversation the whole time we've been chatting so far today, is the Olympics coming up. So just about a year ago, so October 2023, it was announced that flag football would be coming to the Olympics. For most, this is a sport that was or still is played on public parks, and now it's going to be playing on the biggest stage of them all in LA 2028. There's a lot of talking points around the sport at the Olympics, so what we'll do, guys, we'll kind of pick a few of them. But first of all, Liam, for you, how cool is it that flag football is going to be at the Olympics?
Yeah, I mean, it's still a little bit surreal, to be honest. I was watching Paris Olympics summer, a few weeks ago, and just picturing flag football players being at that opening ceremony and then competing and being live on the BBC, and then being at the closing ceremony and so on. It hasn't really sunk in, and I really hope that it helps develop the sport even more. And I feel like flag has grown considerably since 2019, since I started, and I feel like it's just going to push it on even more. So yeah, it's just really very exciting, and I hope the governing body like BAFA and generally sort of sport within the UK really supports a push for GB to be there. We don't really know yet how many teams or the structure of the tournament, what it's going to be, kind of what the qualification process will be. That's all to come. But what we can do is obviously focus on ourselves and how we improve as a team and become even more of a high performance program. So there's certainly things that we can be doing.
Ollie, yourself, is that something you ever thought would ever happen?
No, I knew there'd been like whispers around it in the sport for a few years, but I was kind of one of those people that probably was really pessimistic about it, just thinking like flag football in the Olympics, no, that's not going to happen. So yeah, when it actually did finally be announced officially, it's pretty surreal, like Liam said, and it's just very exciting. I think the opportunity now the sport has, not just in this country but just across the world, to really kind of grab that opportunity and just grow. It's just really exciting, really, and especially with how much the NFL are now pushing and pushing flag and kind of the marketing campaigns they're doing around it. And the sport just seems like it's just in a really strong position where it's going to get better and better, really.
Yeah. So something we spoke about this off air, and you kind of Ollie, you pointed the question about the squad. So something that's created a lot of controversy, especially with the US team, but to an extent this is going to apply to Team GB as well. I assume it's like the NFL suddenly have shown an interest in flag football. Like they weren't really that much interested in the last few years. Like, we'll promote it a bit, but suddenly the NFL flag football on the radar, and there's obviously been a lot of big players asked the question about the Olympics. So, but Daryl Deshette, the US QB, he's been very vocal on what his opinions on this are in terms of it's our team, we play flag football, we're the guys that should be going to the Olympics. So, come yourself all out first, like, where do you sit on this one? Should it be, I'll use the word amateur loosely because I'm not trying to downplay people, should it be that the amateur flag players that are representing their country the Olympics, or should the NFL be getting involved?
It's a really tough question. I mean, I certainly have the backs of like the amateur guys that have been playing the sport for a long time. I think I almost do feel quite sorry for them and feel like they've been disrespected quite a lot, really. And I also think it's quite disrespectful when you see NFL players saying, "I'm just going to play at the Olympics," or people just picking their all-star teams, because these guys they're amateur players, most of them. They love the sport and have just been playing the sport for a long time, and it's them really that's kind of put the sport on the map. And it's kind of just like the NFL almost saying like, "Okay, step aside, guys. Now it's now our turn," which I feel is really unfair. I think it's also really disrespectful as well. I don't think people quite realize how good these athletes are that play like on the Team USA flag football team. Like they're probably like 20. Well, some of them are like 20 or 30 pounds lighter than NFL guys, but they're as athletic as NFL guys. Most of them, like a lot of them have played in college at Div 1 to really high level. For one reason or another, they've not made it to the NFL, but like they're like legit athletes who certainly could compete against NFL athletes, I think. And I think there's examples of that in the past where you've kind of had like fighting cancer. So I think that was a team put together by Hoosh at one of the tournaments where they played an NFL team and beat them quite comfortably. So yeah, I think one of the best things publicity wise for the sport would be if they could somehow kind of implement 5v5 flag into the Pro Bowl and kind of have Team USA play against the NFL guys. Because I think offensively the game is played so differently, especially in 5v5, that I'd struggle to see like the NFL guys stopping them, to be honest. I think it'd be very competitive, and there's definitely NFL guys that would kind of transition into flag like quite comfortably. But I think that there needs to be a lot more respect for the actual like amateur guys playing for Team USA right now.
So I think maybe so I absolutely hear what you're saying, Ollie, and if I'm being honest, I don't disagree with you either. I think there's some incredible athletes on, well, I suppose all the teams, but particularly if you look at the world champions, both the US men and women's national teams. There's some fantastic Division 1 athletes on those teams, and I think you're absolutely right. They would give any professional run for the money. Having said that, I do want to stir a wee bit of controversy here. With all the talk of the NFL, getting that bit of interest in flag, and some people saying they want to go to the Olympics. For both of you, and maybe Ollie even come to Liam first. For both of you, if you could pick one player from the NFL that you would like to line up against, who would that be?
That's a good question. As a receiver, I'd like to go up against Patrick Surtain, I think, because I would consider him to be one of the best cornerbacks in the NFL. So just to see how badly he would lock me up would be quite fun, I think. So yeah, maybe that. And then as a blitzer, so when I'm playing defense, the quarterback that I feel like Lamar Jackson would be fun to blitz because I think he would break my ankles.
Well, that's definitely why you need to be careful what you wish for. Ollie, any thoughts from you?
I don't really want to play against any of them, to be honest. I think the coolest thing would be to play against like someone like Patrick Mahomes or just any like the main quarterbacks, Lamar, like Josh Allen, etc. That'd be pretty cool in itself. I don't think there's any particular receiver I'd want to play against because I know what the outcome's going to be. But to say share the field with them and just to see actually what it's like, yeah, let's give it a go. What's the worst that could happen?
We'll go back to the point we made originally. Your sort of thoughts on it. I mean, Gav made a very good point. When you guys were playing last week in Finland, there was nothing from the NFL, and suddenly finals day came along, and suddenly they were NFL were talking all about finals day. So, what's your thoughts on? Obviously, the word all used was very good. It was a bit disrespect. The NFL expecting maybe players just to walk in and go and represent their country. What's your opinion on that situation?
Yeah, I think at the moment it's a lot of just talk, and I feel like some people's comments have been taken out of context, including some of the players, but also including Hoosh, the quarterback's comments as well. But in some ways, it's just increasing exposure for the sport. And whilst I don't necessarily like the way that it's been kind of reported and talked about, it has increased exposure and eyes on the sport. I feel like people should trial, and I think the US guys will be very clear that they're more than happy to see any person come down to the USA trials and give the sport a go and try and break into the national team. And if you earn your spot that way, then you deserve to play. So that would be ultimately what I would expect to see. And I think that's what will happen. I think USA Football, who runs kind of flag, and they seem to have really good investment in the sport, and they seem to be very well organized with some excellent coaches. And I'm sure they're looking at it and going, yeah, we'd love to have some of these NFL level athletes come and give the sport a go, but they'll have the same treatment as anybody else who comes down to trial. They won't get any special dispensations or anything like that. And I hope that's the case anyway. So it'll be really interesting to see how it goes. And there might be some players who aren't in the NFL, but have discovered the sport of flag football through all of this, and they come in and break into the squad and become, Olympians because of that. But yeah, I think as what happens, people can't see it in with too much nuance. It has to be very black and white, and it has to be that one person versus another. And I think that's what's kind of happened here. But yeah, it'd be really interesting to see how it goes over the next 3 years, I suppose, over there and everywhere.
The growth of the game worldwide, there is obviously now we're seeing a lot of GB players playing in the NFL, all different kind of positions and stuff like that. Obviously, there's been a lot of publicity about Lewis Rees-Zammit going over. We've obviously got the Scottish, we get Praise All the talk over there on the Panthers practice squad at the moment. And this is something that could potentially come to our shows as well in terms of squad time trials and stuff like that for the Olympics as well, do you think?
Yeah, definitely. There'll be people who maybe have a British passport or are able to get British passports and passports for other countries who will see it as an avenue to get into the Olympics, and I wouldn't be surprised if we see that. So that's going to be a challenge for governing bodies and how they deal with that. But obviously, I welcome that kind of challenge, because I feel like players are going to come in and improve the program if they're coming from backgrounds like that. So we have one player in our in our team, Spencer Brown, who was one of the best players at the whole tournament. He has a British passport, but is based over in Utah, and has played American football since he was 4 or 5 years old, and he's brought so much experience and so much kind of what he's learned over that time into our program. And he wants what he was one of the best teammates I've ever had, or he is one of the best teammates I've ever had. So that's exciting.
I think that's a really interesting point, though, Liam. In terms, I mean, okay, there's a lot that's made about the NFL and potentially players from the league trying to get into the flag scheme, but actually, I think there's all these other alternative sources which is worth thinking about, because I remember quite distinctly when London 2012 we're kind of building up to that. Obviously, the host Team GB had to field a team in every single sport. And I think it was one of the rowers, Steve Redgrave, possibly, he was part of a big campaign to basically recruit guys that were sort of 6'4", 6'5" to play handball, to play beach volleyball. I think it was even just trying to get random tall guys to play basketball, which maybe seemed a wee bit disrespectful. But you do get a lot of people that will transition between sports. I mean, even with the Winter Olympics, a lot of like the bobsleigh teams are often like sprinters that transition. So I guess it is a really interesting point you make there, that there's various different routes. But I guess if people come along and show what they've got, then it'll be interesting to see how they do.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, talent identification is a huge part of professional sport and Olympic level sport, and it's something that we haven't really implemented in flag yet, but I'm sure that's something that is on the radar over the next couple of years, where we need to profile what does an elite flag football player look like at this level, what are their kind of anthropometric characteristics, so height, weight, body fat percentage, all those sort of things, and then what are some of the traits, physical traits that are required to play at this level, and can we identify people who have never played this sport before but have those traits, have those characteristics, and can we turn them into flag football players?
Yeah, Liam, you're obviously involved in the coaching with the silver program and the under 21s. Obviously, these are probably guys. I mean, you guys, I'm assuming, will have some aspirations to still be playing the game in 4 years' time as well. But is there a kind of good talent pool coming through in terms of GB, in terms of what we've got in the future?
Yeah, so Ollie's also a coach within the program. So
I didn't realise that.
Yeah, it's good that we got both of us to talk about it. So when we started with GB in 2021, we got into the Silver Lions squad then. And we were played within that program for 2 years, and we've moved on to being coaches now, and that really set us up massively for where we are now. So our head coach Dale Kirby, I would credit him with a lot of my development, both as a player and as a person, and I'm sure Ollie would as well. And so that is that kind of being able to give back a little bit, I suppose, has been excellent. And there are some really good players within the Silver Lions that are always pushing us in the squad that went to the Worlds to be better, and to make sure that we're not resting on our laurels and not being complacent. And I'm sure they'll do the same again when it comes to trialing for the squad for next year. And yeah, the under 21s is a brand new thing, and that will we won't be involved in the coaching of that particular element, but the trials for that are coming up soon, and it's great to see, because I think it gives the guys that you talked about, the tournament in Serbia that's just happened recently, kind of under 17s in particular, it gives them a transition point from that level to the adult game. I think that kind of intermediate bridge wasn't there, and it is now, which is good. So yeah, there are some excellent players in this country who are a bit younger. So yeah, the future is bright in that regard.
Yeah, really, I think really important just to acknowledge that as well. We maybe won't do a recap there, but I think the tournament in Serbia did some really great performances from the GB team. I think we had sides for both the under 17s girls and boys, and actually I think in particular call it the under 15s mixed team that made it all the way to the final against Germany. That was a fantastic game. I think they lost by 7 in the end, to a really strong program. So it's great to see we've got that pipeline at the the national program level right the way up. So obviously we talk about early 2028, but I think I've heard in one of your previous interviews that there's the the powers that be really want to think about Brisbane 2032 and beyond. So the fact that we can have British representation, that's really something to be excited about.
Yeah, absolutely. There's some great coaching throughout every age group, and hopefully that will continue to grow with more funding coming in. And I think one thing that funding brings is it probably allows some players that maybe can't financially commit to playing flag at the moment. And I feel like a sport should never be exclusive in that regard. So I'm hoping that when, as funding comes in, and hopefully it will, that we do see some more players who are then able to give the sport a go and compete at this level.
Yeah, I mean, flag football as a sport that Archer is open to anybody. Do you know what I mean? It's all ages of all abilities. It's something that it's, like I said, it's some people it's just as a hobby, but when you get to you guys' level, it is elite at sport. But there's nothing stopping anybody playing flag football. That's what I loved about it when I first started playing. I had a rough knowledge of American football. You guys know my dad was a BAFTA official for over 30 years, so I have a long history in the game. So it was my opportunity to play. I was never fit enough or capable enough of playing playing kitted, so it was my opportunity to play a sport that I loved. I mean, and I think there's many people probably out there watching, listening to this that. I mean, go along, find your local team, get involved. You just never know what could happen. I mean, when you get to my age, it's that opportunity is gone. But there is lots of probably school age kids, and I know it's something that is starting to get taught in schools across the UK now as a sport, which is a massive step forward in terms of development of the sport. I mean, developing it at a kind of amateur level, but starting to get it into schools is going to be huge for the sport going forward. And like Gav says, hopefully early 2020 is not a one-off in terms of this. Maybe let's just hope we can get this keep going, because the more this sport grows, the more people get into it, the better it is for everybody. Do you think it's something for the future, or do you think it's something we can continue with the Olympics going forward, do you think?
I hope so, yeah. I think the biggest thing going forward after the Olympics is going to be, I just really hope it's not one and done at the Olympics. I think that's the only thing that I'm slightly scared of at the moment. And I don't know what factors in and whether or not it will be in the programme for Brisbane. But I mean, if it continues to be an Olympic programme, then it will just catapult the sport into stratosphere, really. And they'll just continue to grow, really.
Yeah. Like you said earlier on, as soon as something becomes an Olympic sport, I mean, obviously there's controversy with different sports, but it's the level of funding that suddenly becomes available to the sport. Once you get to that level of getting to the Olympics and being part of Team GB, the level, even any sort of funding for that sport is going to be a boost, because, like you said, Liam, it's mainly self-funded. You have guys having to pay for their own kit, pay for their own travel, get sponsorships. We've seen a few of the teams doing kind of GoFundMe's to get themselves to tournaments and stuff like that. I mean, for an elite sport, that's not something that should be happening. It should be funded from the powers that be, and that's obviously a different topic for maybe for another day, but something that any sort of funding into the sport is going to make a massive difference, isn't it, Liam?
Oh, definitely, yeah. A little bit did come in this year, but only very small amounts. So, the guys spent a lot of money to go to Finland, and then obviously the camps that we have every month. That the cost of travel, hotels, all those sort of things, and just keeping yourself in that kind of high performance shape. The money you have to extra money you have to spend on nutrition and training and the gym and everything like that. There's a lot that goes into it, and it's a big financial commitment. So yeah, the more funding there is, the better, because it supports guys with that.
Yeah, I think one of the things that's, I guess, peculiar about sports funding in the UK, certainly in the past, is that the fact that it almost becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. So I'd mentioned some of these sports that were put together, or we put teams together for the London Olympics in 2012. And then not long after, I think the Sport GB or the main funding body culled the money for a number of those programs, including, okay, so there were the kind of the smaller ones like handball, which is big in Europe but not really in the UK, or beach volleyball, but even basketball, because it wasn't a serious prospect for a medal, they pulled the money for that. But I guess what's maybe exciting, looking at the body of work for the British team is, you guys can stand and say you're number 10 in the world currently, or women can say they're number 7 and actually number 1 in Europe. So, there is something, that there is a foundation, given that, particularly for the women, that was their first world championship ever, I believe. There's something that can really kick on and look 4 years ahead as a serious prospect.
Yeah, guys. There you go. Sorry, you go. I'm sorry.
I was just going to say, I think the successes. I mean, we've got a lot of work to do in the men's program, but I think certainly like the success in the women's program after the last few years needs to be highlighted, because hopefully when it comes to funding and stuff, they'll look at. I think they're in a really strong position where they could quite easily medal. and hopefully that will be looked at, and that will bring in a lot of funding, hopefully, and maybe the men's program can coattail off that a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, hopefully, I mean, obviously, because for a lot of people, it will be a bit of a niche sport. I mean, there isn't a mainstream sport that they can easily look at it and kind of measure. Like, these guys are good enough to go and win a medal. Like, they need to really look at and listen to the experts of this sport and think, well, what are the prospects here? And it's not just a case of, or maybe both teams have a chance of doing very well in an international tournament, as you've already seen. So let's hope that those at the funding bodies kind of look at what's happened over the last couple of years, the growth of the sport in this country, and think, well, if we do put a bit of money into this, this could be a long-term investment that's going to pay off massively. So let's hope that's what happens going forward.
Fingers crossed.
Excellent. Well, guys, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you today. Thanks for joining us. I mean, that is a sport that me and Gav have been following for a long time and playing and massively passionate about. This is to have this first opportunity to actually expand on it and get you guys' thoughts on what's happening and what's going to happen in the future has been an absolute pleasure. So, Liam, thanks very much for joining us.
Oh no, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for inviting us, and thank you for promoting the sport and sharing some of those clips from the Worlds. It's really appreciated.
Excellent. And Ollie, I mean, obviously, unfortunately, that injury at the tournament, but it's been great to hear all about your experiences of what happened at the tournament and your career so far.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you having me, and again, all the coverage you kind of did throughout the tournament. It doesn't go unnoticed as players and as coaches and everyone who's out there, and it means a lot, like kind of creating all that engagement back home. So yeah, we really appreciate it.
Excellent. And Gav, thanks for being my co-host today, talking about a sport we both love.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is something that I've been involved in some form or another for more than half my life now. And it's just great to see how it's gone from strength to strength. So yeah, it's been great having you guys on talking about, I guess, the story so far, because I think there's plenty more chapters to be written, and we'll be absolutely supporting you along the way.
Excellent. And Gav, as we mentioned about the Finals Cup this weekend, what kind of coverage have we got coming up for that?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think it's really worth noting for anyone that's listened to the pod and been interested, maybe want to find out a bit more about what flag football looks like, see some of the best players in the UK. So I believe that it's BAFA that is streaming the event through YouTube. So there'll be details come out from that. I think if it's anything like last year, it's actually going to be the team from the Way We HNC that'll be doing the commentary for that. So yeah, hopefully we've seen some excellent live streams from the World Cup, and yeah, I think we'll get similar quality coverage for the UK finals. So it'd be great to see you guys go on. I think it's basically a full NFL playoffs type bracket in one day. So it'll be kicking off early in the morning, and it was well past sunset by the time Hornet Smoke finished last year. So I'm sure we'll be seeing something similar. So yeah, it'll be a full day of action, and yeah, we'll be following it all the way.
Excellent. For everybody that's watching and listening, thanks very much for tuning in. As I said at the start, this is the first of many of the special cruise where we'll be focused on the world of flag football. Liam and Ollie are just the first of many guests that we've got lined up over the next few months. So keep an eye on all our social medias. Give us a follow, give us a subscribe. You'll be able to find out first who's coming on next. Until then, the special crew will be back soon.